Viewer discretion advised. This video contains sensitive content that may be disturbing to some listeners. Please proceed with caution. Hello, I hope you're doing okay. I want to share my story. It started when I was a sophomore in high school. A bunch of new students arrived, including a 19-year-old guy I'll call Lorenzo. He stood out because he was older and bigger than everyone else. At school, we had these group games where everyone had to participate, even if they didn't want to. One game forced me to talk to Lorenzo. I didn't seek it out. I just followed the rules. I'm usually nice to people I don't know, and this time was no different. But what started as a casual chat turned into something scary. A month later, his friends started saying that Lorenzo liked me. That's when things went south. One day, they invited me to their classroom. I didn't know why, but I went with a friend. When we got there, they stopped my friend and wouldn't let her in. They said I was just the guest. It was already weird, so I had to go in alone. Inside, the room was dark. Only Lorenzo was there, sitting on a bench. He greeted me and started asking really personal questions, staring the whole time. When I asked him something back, he'd either stay silent or change the subject. I got tired of it and asked his age. He said he was 19, but when I tried to ask something else, he got aggressive. "I told you I'm 19, he snapped. There was something in his voice, something violent, that scared me. I left the room and decided to avoid him, but he didn't stop. Even though he could see I wanted nothing to do with him, he kept looking for me. He'd stare at me, follow my every move with his eyes. He tried to talk to me and used his friends to get us alone. Since we had mutual friends, he started hanging out with our group, which made me even more uncomfortable. Lorenzo started making plans with our friends. When he made these plans, I'd ignore them, thinking it was no big deal. But when I asked about the plans, my friends said they didn't know what I was talking about. I realized Lorenzo was organizing these plans to get me alone with him. One day, he told me, "I'd like to kidnap you, tie you up, and put you in my closet." He started moving closer, and his hand grabbed my back. I quickly pulled away and left. I was terrified and started rejecting all his plans. For a whole year, it was the same. He kept inviting me, and I kept saying no. Once, I went to Lorenzo's house with a friend, and he invited us over. I met his family, and everything seemed normal. As we were leaving, Lorenzo asked, "So when are you going to take me to yours?" I was confused and told him that was never going to happen. I'd never had anyone over to my house. He complained, "But I invited you to mine because I can't go to yours." When he saw the scared look on my face, he quickly apologized, but I decided to distance myself even more. Despite all this, Lorenzo didn't stop. He kept staring at me and started telling his friends that I was his girlfriend. I found out from a mutual friend. This made me even more uncomfortable. I also noticed him taking pictures of me at school. It was obvious from the way he held his phone, pointing it at me. Then the pandemic hit and somehow he found my Facebook. He started messaging me, insisting on dates, but I made excuses and said I couldn't. 2 years went by, and he kept trying to contact me, but I avoided him. But the situation got worse. Our mutual friends told me that Lorenzo asked for my phone number, my address, where I worked, and where he could find me. For my safety, I asked them not to tell him anything. One day, as I was leaving my house, I ran into him. I started noticing he was passing by my neighborhood more frequently. When I saw him from a distance, I ignored him so he wouldn't talk to me or follow me. My fear grew when one day, walking home, I turned around and saw him hiding behind a wall. I knew it was him. It was obvious because who else would hide for fear of being seen? At that moment, I remembered his comment about kidnapping me, and I was afraid he might do something to me. Fed up with his insistence, I confronted him and asked how he felt about me. He admitted he liked me a lot, which was no surprise, but I turned him down as politely as I could. He seemed to accept it at first, but as the days went by, something changed. He started insulting me on Messenger and calling me in the middle of the night. When he got my number, he sent me offensive messages on WhatsApp. My friends told me he kept asking where he could find me because he wanted to surprise me. I insisted they not say anything. I blocked him on WhatsApp and Messenger, but he kept sending me messages on Instagram, posting things about couples on my wall, and tagging me in romantic content. Tired of it, I blocked him on Instagram and Facebook too. Then he followed me on TikTok, constantly checking my profile. I knew this from the app's notifications. I blocked him there as well. Not content with that, he looked me up on Twitter and Threads, the new app. I was furious with his constant harassment. Finally, when I saw that none of this was going to stop, I told my boyfriend everything. He sent Lorenzo a threatening message and I blocked him. I recently found out that one of my friends, who I no longer speak to for other reasons, told Lorenzo where I currently work. This scares me because I think he might look for me at my workplace, especially after everything he's done. Although I'm a little calmer because of what my boyfriend did, I'm still on guard. That's my story. I'm writing this late at night, so good night. Tell me in the comments, what would you do in these cases? Would you confront the stalker? Would you notify the police? If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos and like and share with your friends. My name is Santiago, but you can call me Santi. I'm from Mexico, specifically from the state of Aguascalientes. I've been following your channel for a while, and your stories about stalkers have always intrigued me. For a long time, I hesitated to share my experience, but I finally dared to do it. I hope my story helps raise awareness and support those who have gone through something similar. I'm currently in university, but what I'm about to tell you happened during my childhood, from preschool to high school. I've always been a quiet, introverted, and very creative kid. In preschool, I had fun playing with the few friends I had, since I found it difficult to socialize. Among my classmates, there was a boy with whom I never managed to connect. Out of respect for him and his family, I'll keep his identity anonymous and call him Antonio. His family was very strange. I remember his father being very rude, his mother very odd, and his younger brother, well, let's just say he was no different. Antonio always wanted to be my friend, but perhaps because of my upbringing or personality, I didn't feel comfortable around him. Antonio often invited me to his house. I would avoid his invitations with excuses like, I can't, I have classes in the afternoon, or I'm busy, maybe another day. However, he became increasingly insistent until one of his comments alerted my mom. I don't remember the exact conversation, but one day when I was between 3 and 5 years old, I came to my mom and asked, Mommy, what does bikini mean? My mom was surprised. It's not normal for a child of that age to ask those kinds of questions, she said. She asked me where I got that word, and I told her that Antonio had told me his dad looked at girls in bikinis on his computer. She found that disturbing and off-putting. And from that moment on, my mom decided she would never let me be Antonio's friend or go over to his house. Things calmed down for a while, but things got worse when I entered elementary school. Antonio kept insisting in indirect ways that he wanted to be my friend, but I ignored him. One afternoon, my mom came to pick me up from school while I was putting my things in the trunk. Antonio suddenly appeared in front of the car and said that I had invited him over, but this was completely false. I had never spoken to him, much less invited him. My mom told him no, he was wrong, but he insisted on coming with us. He was so persistent that my mom had to be blunt to get him to leave. Over time, Antonio continued to invite me over like he had in preschool, but now my mom was the one making excuses. No, he can't today, he's very busy, she'd say. My mother's constant refusal reached the point that Antonio's mom asked if we were doing it on purpose. For me, Antonio became a pain in the neck. He was always on my nerves, and even though I made new friends, he became more aggressive. Sometimes he made fun of me or threatened to hit my classmates. I remember one time when I tried to defend a friend with whom I had a somewhat unstable relationship. Antonio was bothering him, and I felt so angry that I stood in front of him to confront him. Antonio was intimidating. He felt like the macho man of our generation because he trained in boxing and knew he was imposing. Antonio, seeing me standing in front of him, simply laughed at me and mocked me. He turned around and walked away. Luckily, we didn't come to blows, but I felt very vulnerable. The situation became more tense as time went on. Fast forward to high school, where everything was similar. Antonio was still unbearable, although somewhat less so because he had formed his own social circle. The thing is, he liked to talk about sensitive topics like drug trafficking or lewd and sexual things. You can imagine where this is going. One day, the situation escalated to another level. Antonio approached me, stood very close to me, and then asked me a question out of nowhere that made me deeply uncomfortable. He asked me if I had already touched myself. I don't want to be more explicit, but that question disgusted me and made me feel enormously vulnerable. I didn't respond and tried to convince myself that it was just one of those stupid comments kids make at school. But deep down, I knew it wasn't right. Fast forward to high school. It's important to mention that my school included elementary, middle, and high school. So I'd been with Antonio for as long as I can remember. At that time, I was 17 and he was 18. In Mexico, the age of majority is 18, and this is key to understanding the seriousness of what happened. I've always been creative, as I said at the beginning, so in my last year of high school, I decided to join the humanities section. We were few, just 4 women and 4 men, including Antonio. The desks had wheels, and some people used them to do silly things around the classroom. Everything seemed normal that day. I was taking notes, studying for tests, and Antonio and a friend of his started bothering the students, but with me it was different. Antonio started flirting with me in a way that made me uncomfortable. He said, "Come here, little one." I looked up, confused, and he took the opportunity to do something he called a joke. He approached me with his desk pressed against my body in front of the entire class. I was nervous. I didn't understand what was happening. Then Antonio reached out and began caressing my leg from my thigh, near my crotch to my knee, in a very uncomfortable way and, of course, without my consent. I felt indignation, repulsion, and disgust. I took my hand away and yelled at him to stop. He laughed as if I was funny and asked me what was wrong. Remember, I was a minor and he was already an adult. At the time, I didn't fully understand the seriousness of it, but I decided to tell my mom. She got furious and told me that no one had the right to touch me like that. Her words made me realize that the joke wasn't a joke. It wasn't normal. She advised me to threaten to report him, since being an adult, he could face legal consequences for sexually harassing a minor. And it didn't take long. The next day, Antonio tried to touch my legs the same way again. With that same attitude, I stopped him and told him that if he did it again, I would report him and sue him. He just mocked me, saying that I'd only end up in jail, as if he didn't take me seriously. "You've been warned," I said angrily. And that's when he understood I was serious. Hours later, his friend approached me to ask if the report was true or a joke. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Yes, I am serious." Since then, Antonio stopped harassing me. His friend seemed nervous, and I never had any problems with him again. Today, I'm 20 years old and halfway through my university degree in Querétaro. I recently asked my brother about Antonio. He told me that he has completely changed, that he left his inappropriate behaviors behind, and that now he is focused on his life. And the truth is, it's a relief to know, because I believe that no matter how lost someone seems, there is always hope for change. For privacy reasons, you can call me Maria. I always wanted to share my experience with a bully I had a while ago. I hope this person has forgotten about me by now, but what I went through really shaped my life. I want to share my story so others can be careful with the people they choose to be around and to raise awareness about bullying. Since I was little, I had a best friend, whom I'll call Lisbeth, to protect her identity. We grew up together and were very close. We were both somewhat imaginative and childish, which made us unpopular at school. I liked her very much and always defended her from those who bullied her, because Lisbeth had a peculiar, sometimes bipolar personality. She would say strange things like having friends from other dimensions like fairies or witches, and at 15, she claimed to be the girlfriend of an anime character she greatly admired. She even made cuts in her skin with a blade, engraving that character's initials. These attitudes were evident to everyone, including my teachers, who warned me to keep my distance so as not to affect my studies. But I felt bad leaving her alone, since she didn't have many friends. The teachers tried to help Lisbeth by scheduling her with the school psychologist to address her mood swings. However, her mother decided to transfer her to a different school when the situation became more serious. Over time, Lisbeth became very possessive of me. If I tried to meet other girls, she would throw tantrums, get angry, and force me to choose between them or her. This led to fights and isolated me from others, leaving me alone with her. As a child, I tolerated her because I didn't want to abandon her. But as we grew older, her behavior began to bother me deeply. Lisbeth also became upset if I went out with my family or went on trips with my cousins without inviting her. On several occasions, she would show up unannounced at family gatherings, creating very awkward moments. At 16, I met a group of girls and boys with whom I began to spend time. I tried to balance my time between them, Lisbeth, and even tried to integrate her into the group, but she refused to socialize. She was always looking for excuses to get away, like saying she felt sick and asking me to walk her home. Once there, she magically recovered. One day, I met up with a girl from the group to spend the afternoon. For some reason, my phone was on silent, so I didn't check it until the end of the day. When I took out my phone to tell my dad to come get me, I saw I had 28 missed calls from Lisbeth and countless WhatsApp messages, insistently asking me where I was. Scared, my first thought was that something serious had happened, and I called her, but she didn't answer. I asked my dad to take me to her house to make sure she was okay. When I arrived, her mom told me Lisbeth was on the building's rooftop, a communal space where we used to play as little girls because no one else used it. I went up the stairs and arrived after a few minutes. That's when I called her. Lisbeth, are you here? I couldn't see her. Lisbeth, it's me. I came to see if you were okay. As I scanned the place, something caught my eye. Behind one of the columns, she was half hidden there, smiling a very disturbing smile. She was laughing softly as if she didn't want me to hear her. Although she didn't try very hard to hide, I saw her clearly. I approached, calling her again, and then she came out of hiding with an exaggerated expression of sadness, pretending to cry inconsolably. And here's the strange, disturbing part. I had clearly seen that she was laughing seconds before, but when she saw me, she simply started pretending to cry. She accused me of abandoning her all afternoon to be with my other friend, whom she insulted, calling her a bitch. Suddenly, she started running across the roof and went to one of the walls that surrounded it and began screaming that she had tried to take her life by jumping from the 3rd floor because of me, because I didn't love her. Then she tried to climb the wall, saying that if she continued seeing my friend, she would jump and I would be responsible for her death. Stupefied by all this madness, the only thing I could do was promise to do what she wanted. She asked, "You won't believe this," but again, what seconds before was a cry transformed into a smile. But it was a different smile, a macabre smile that she showed me at that moment and that still haunts me. I was so scared that I was afraid she would actually jump. Today I know she was just trying to manipulate me, but at the time, I didn't see it that way. Sometime later, we both started dating another girl from high school, whom I'll call Clara. She became a very close friend and always warned me about Lisbeth, saying that something wasn't right with her, although I also considered her a friend. One night, the three of us went out for a walk. Lisbeth was ahead, skipping and singing like a little girl. I laughed and told Clara she looked cute. Suddenly, Lisbeth stopped, turned around with a crazy look on her face, and ran toward me. What I'm about to tell you is completely real. Before I could react, she grabbed me by the neck with brutal force. She squeezed so hard that she left marks on my neck and the look on her face. No, I can't describe it to you. It seemed like she genuinely wanted to kill me right there. Clara, seeing all of this, ran toward us and tried to stop her. And at that moment, Lisbeth let go of me and pushed me to the ground. Then she ran home crying. I was in shock, not understanding what the hell had happened. I just cried in Clara's arms, and that day I decided I had to stay away from her completely. During the vacation, I avoided Lisbeth. I went on a trip with my family, and although she texted me as if nothing had happened, I blocked her on my phone. Clara spoke to her and told me that Lisbeth denied attacking me, saying that Clara and I were making it up so we could exclude her and be with other friends. Tired of her harassment, one day I confronted her and told her I didn't want to be her friend anymore, that I was fed up with her dangerous and obsessive behavior. Given this, she continued trying to contact me for a while, but I avoided her until I entered college and moved to another city. I lost track of her and learned from friends that she also moved away to study. Years went by without thinking about her until one weekend. While I was visiting my parents, my mother gave me a letter that someone had left in the mailbox with no sender or address. Seeing the handwriting, I immediately knew it was from Lisbeth. Her handwriting was unmistakable, very peculiar. The letter was 5 pages long, handwritten on both sides. In it, she told me she hated me and loved me at the same time. She confessed that she had always been secretly in love with me, something I never imagined, since she always talked about her love for the anime character. She also accused me of pushing her out of my life, saying that because of me, she had tried to take her own life several times and had to see a psychologist. The letter was terrifying. She obsessively repeated that she hated me and loved me. She called me a monster and blamed me for her obsession. At the end, she included a phone number inviting me to contact her so we could see each other again. I felt terrified and vulnerable after so much time without hearing from her. I kept the letter, but I didn't have the courage to call her number. It's been a few years since then, and luckily, I haven't heard from Lisbeth again, nor have I run into her. I hope she's living a peaceful and happy life because I don't wish her any harm, but I don't want her around me either. I want to share my story about the abuse I suffered when I was little. It's a tough story, but I hope you read it and that my experience, even if it's anonymous, helps raise awareness about these cases. Here's my story. This happened in 2003 when I was 3 years old. My family was well off financially. My father worked late, and my mother was busy with social activities, so I spent a lot of time with babysitters. Even though they loved me and I lacked nothing materially, I was often alone with them. In September 2003, I started swimming lessons. I was very good for my age, and although I was in the youngest group, I was sometimes moved up to the next level because I stood out. In that group, there was a teacher, whom I'll call Mateo to maintain anonymity, whom I was very fond of. Mateo was kind, treated me attentively, and let me use a slide that the younger ones couldn't use. As a child, I admired him as one does a trusted adult. For Christmas 2003, I was given a blue swimsuit, my favorite color. I had learned to dress myself, since parents were not allowed in the locker room. But that day, my new swimsuit was too tight, and I had trouble taking it off. Mateo came into the locker room and asked if I needed help. Since I trusted him a lot and things were really getting complicated this time, I said yes, that he should help me. He came in while I was struggling, told me I was getting prettier and prettier, that he loved me very much, and began to take off my swimsuit. Up until that moment, I hadn't noticed anything strange about him, but something didn't feel right. When he had me without clothes, he sat me on top of him and began to caress my body. Like the innocent little girl I was, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but deep down I knew this wasn't right. He insisted that I was his special little girl, that people who love each other, like he told me, did these things. That day there were only caresses and the occasional kiss, but my heart told me something was wrong. Over time, things got worse. What started with caresses escalated into more serious abuse. Now he rubbed me with his fingers, and I'm sorry if I'm being too explicit, but I don't know how else to tell it. Then there was forced oral sex and finally carnal access. It got to the point where my mind shut down. I would simply let time pass, dissociated, while he did what he wanted. When he began to realize that I wasn't reacting anymore, he seemed to lose interest. He didn't like me as much anymore, and then he started looking for other uses for me. He brought other men who paid to be with me, and this became a regular occurrence. It happened several times a week, as I went swimming 3 days a week. The abuse continued until June 2004, when I managed to convince my parents to transfer me to ballet classes like my friends did, and that ended my contact with him. I never told my parents about this, and to this day they don't know. Only my partner, my best friend, and a couple of close people know. This trauma, of course, left deep wounds in me, a lot of anger toward him and sometimes toward myself. For years, I tried to bury those memories, but they never went away. A few months ago, when I was 24, I was working as a salesperson at a supermarket near where I used to live. And one of those days, I saw him. It was him. He recognized me and approached my stand with a smile. He was accompanied by a woman and a girl about 9 or 10 years old. He brazenly told me he remembered me, that I had been his student, and that it was a shame I was quitting swimming because I was so good. His words, with a possible double meaning, pierced me like a knife. He introduced his family as if nothing had happened. Weeks later, he returned alone, approached me, and with an intimidating attitude, told me he had found me, that I would always be his, and that I would never escape what he did to me. His words devastated me, because in part I felt he was right. I've never been able to forget what I went through. Still, I mustered up the strength to face him. I told him I was never his, that I was happy now and had someone who loved me. It wasn't entirely true, but I needed to show him he had no power over me. Today, I see him on social media. I know he's doing well, but I'm deeply worried about the girl next to him. I fear that she and perhaps other children are suffering the same thing I experienced. Sharing this story, even if it's anonymously, is a way for me to vent and raise my voice. And I want to make a very quick reflection. Okay? I don't know if throughout these episodes of Bullies you've realized something interesting, and that could be a good clue for you. If you analyze it, most of the stories where the victims remain silent is when they end up worse, when the bullying escalates to very, very serious levels. And those stories in which the victim speaks openly, accuses their aggressor, they always or almost always stop in time. I hope this helps someone. Raise your voices. There are people who can help you. Don't stay silent, please.